What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond Wellness Podcast. We're just here giving practical advice for real world situations. I'm your host, Charles Johnson, along with my favorite co host, my man, Pots and Pans, Mr. Kevin Hope is here tonight. Tonight, tonight we have a very special guest. He's a master instructor for a mental health program called ACEs. ACEs is an acronym that stands for Adverse Childhood Experience. He has also worked in the behavioral health field for over 25 years from his humble beginnings in Herndon, Virginia. He's also one of George Mason University's finest, Mr. Harry Kuma. What's going on? What's going on, gentlemen?
What's going on? How you doing?
Good.
Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it.
You like that? You like that intro?
I mean, there's a lot missing, but that's okay. There's a lot missing, but that's all right.
I'm going to let you fill in the blanks and wherever I messed up because I didn't want to get too deep.
I respect that. I appreciate that too.
Yeah, because it could have went south. The introduction.
Yeah.
Could have lasted half hour.
So, man. So Harry, welcome to the show. I'm glad we got you on here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. And
Kev, signing all the contracts, getting that money right, sent the checks, so it went through, so we're good.
I got his incentive to come on the show, Kev. I sent him over a $5 gift card to Chick-fil-A. So
there you go, Chick-fil-A will do it.
Yeah. So Harry, for our audience, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and where you're from and?
Well, yeah. So grew up in Herndon, Virginia. Went to George Mason University. Just sort of how I got into the field of psychology or behavioral health is just an interesting one. My first major was biology, but then after time, and those, all that pre-med stuff and all that, those weed out classes, I was like, you know what, this is not for me. I'm not pre-med. I should have been at a different school if I was going to go that track. So I switched to psychology and then just ended up loving it. I fell in love with it. I've always been a person that loved helping people. So it just was right down my path, basically. And so that's how I kind of navigated that's the beginning of my navigation into where I sit now. Yep.
Kev, I don't know if you know this, but Harry and I used to work together also in behavioral health. We worked in a locked residential treatment center.
We were there making the big bucks.
Residential facility.
Oh yeah. I don't know if we can mention the name of it, but we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. No. But I don't think that's going to score us any points either. But no,
that's where rubber meets the road, my friend.
Absolutely,
facility,
and that was a great experience because you could kind of see the diagnoses you manifested into these behaviors right in front of your face. So everything you learned in school, like in an abnormal psych class, next thing you know, is right in front of you when you start working, and you see pretty much everything. You'd be shocked what becomes normal to you in those settings over time.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. I just know working in there over time, you just become very desensitized to.
Very desensitized. You get to become desensitized to a lot of different things. I remember telling a story like, when I first walked in and they gave me a tour, the kids looked kind of disheveled, very like unbathed, unkept. And, like they had the open food bar, people are reaching across and staff is eating the food with. I'm like, oh my goodness, how are they touching this food? Like I was thinking it was this like terrible, but then after a month working there, I'm doing the same thing. Doing the same thing. Like it just, everything just becomes normal. But there's a lot of stories. We have a lot of stories from that place, but it was just an interesting experience to start there and see and just kind of be thrown into the fire and see these things manifested, and reading the charts and seeing what led to these behaviors. And
Right.
we're speaking about ACEs today, so it's kind of you can see the connection almost in some
Right.
ways.
Wow.
I'll speak to that in a little bit, but it definitely was eye opening.
Yeah. And
hmm
Harry started probably back when I did, and it was like late 90s, 99, maybe early
No, I
2000.
started after 2001. That's when
2001.
I started. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
got
I was
there.
still in high school.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference.
Wait. Who said they were still in high school?
He could be still in high school. That's fine.
Graduated in
Yeah,
94. I graduated in 94.
yeah. My first day there, I think Chaz and I arm wrestled. And
That's guts, buddy.
no, I beat him clearly.
Oh,
No debating.
This ain't how.
But just that's
yeah.
did me of this. So it's just I don't know.
Aces. That's
Yeah,
aces.
yeah.
First day I met him,
For you.
first day I met him, I asked him for $5 to buy some cookies. He said, I can't do that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, he's a nice guy. I thought
Tighter than a bark on a tree, boy. Tighter
yeah,
than
I
a
can
bark
see
on
that.
a
I can see
tree.
that.
I don't like spending my own money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So that gift certificate you got, boy, you better cherish that.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's part of the contract. I mean, some other stuff coming, but we'll see.
So what's the difference now working with kids when you started in early 2000 versus now?
In regard to the two different settings,
Yeah, the two different settings, and yes, of the two different settings.
the difference, for myself, with that initial work experience, that was the extreme for me in my career. Like as far as that goes, it's a block facility. These kids are deemed not good for their setting or a public setting from that standpoint until they get some things under control. So they're in that behavioral health center. Uh, Now, working with just the general population with kids, you don't see, there's no charts, number one. There's nothing to read. There's no background. So outside of that, so let's say for me, I would have to spend a lot more time getting to know a kid's history. You'd have to build rapport, build trust, or have other professionals who have worked with that kid to really start getting to know what their background situation is. I think in the behavioral health center, everything was in your face. Their behaviors were in your face. This is how they conducted themselves. This is how they interacted with their peers and the adults around them. And if you wanted some more insight to why, then you would read the chart. There's more subtlety working in the general population than you would see in a behavioral health center.
Well, what you're seeing in the behavioral health center is extreme.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Obviously, at some point, it becomes so normalized because you're there for so long, mandated over time, so
hmm
long, so many days, it becomes normalized. But what you're seeing in a behavioral health setting is extreme. It's right in your face. And that's
Absolutely.
why they're no longer in general population,
hmm
right? Because their behaviors have become so extreme that it raised eyebrows or somebody got hurt,
Yeah.
right? So, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know. Can you tell us one of those stories about the first time you got punched in the face, Harry?
You want me to? I won't finish the story, but I can start the story. I mean, the in that setting, those type of interactions, and can segue into ACEs a little bit,
Right.
because that violence, that level of violence, like someone striking me in the face, because that did happen. That was a true story. I don't know why Chaz smiles and laughs every time he tells
I
the story
know.
about me getting punched in the face, but that did happen. But that kid was he was quickly dealt with. We restrained him, and he was placed in in the secluded room that place had at the time. But that was a normal thing in the environment that he grew up in. and that's how, stress was taken care of. And and that kind of speaks to ACEs, because when you see behaviors like that when it comes to ACEs, it's not really about, it's more about a reprogramming of your own lens, and really asking, where does that type of aggression suit this individual? Where does it have a benefit for this individual? So, if you go back and, reading charts, because I used to read the charts and really get a good background, because I worked on the acute unit. So these people are coming in and out. And you really got a clear understanding of why this individual was violent, why this individual was behaving this way. So, it was a lapse in my judgment in that situation. I didn't understand how upset he was with me, but the level of violence that he was capable of was clear. It was in the chart,
Yeah.
and I turned my back to him and turned back around, and he took his opportunity,
Yeah.
made Chaz so happy.
Yeah.
I don't even understand. People came out, to, like, the
Yeah.
code team came out that day. These
Mhm.
guys had smiles on their faces. I'm like, okay, I see what this is all about. But it was all in his charts, and so
Mhm.
seeing, and the behaviors that we've seen, like, Chaz can speak to that too, like, all that stuff was clearly in the charts. Clearly, some of the
It was
stuff
a
you would read.
history.
Oh yeah, some of the stuff you would read in the charts. That's why anytime the truth can be stranger than fiction, and those charts spoke to that for sure. Like, you wouldn't believe what you were reading, but it was documented in their charts.
Right.
Mhm.
So before we go further, I
Mhm.
wanted you to kind of give the audience a little bit of information about ACEs. So what is ACEs?
So ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. The principal investigators were Dr. Felitti and Dr. Anda, Robert Anda and Vincent Felitti. One with the CDC in Georgia and one with Kaiser Permanente in San Diego. They were the principal investigators of the original ACE study.
Mhm.
And I can just give a sort of a history of how ACEs came about, and then kind of segue into a lot of different things. But so ACEs, originally it wasn't ACEs. So the foundation to ACEs was a weight loss program in San Diego, right? So the weight loss program headed by Dr. Felitti in San Diego involved fasting, involved supplementation, and it was a very successful program. I'm not sure exactly, hundreds of participants, but very successful program. People were losing a lot of weight. People had to come in. They had to report their losses, I think, per biweekly or something like that. But they had to report their weight loss progress. And there was one person who reported their weight, but what Dr. Felitti noticed was a dramatic weight gain, right? And so Dr. Felitti called this person in and had a sit down interview with this person. And what came out was that this individual was sexually propositioned by an older gentleman at work, right?
Was this a male or a female?
The individual that he called in
Mhm.
was a female.
Okay.
So that individual was sexually propositioned by an older gentleman at work. Then what happened was they were re-traumatized by that incident,
Mhm.
and they quickly went back to what they considered a protection, because further in the interview, the individual disclosed that they were sexually abused by their grandfather for a number of years. So the older gentleman sexually propositioning them at work brought back a whole boat of trauma, and then they had to go back to the protection that aided them as a young person, and that was food. So you think of food, comfort food, working on pleasure receptors within the brain, salty, fatty, sugary foods. that was almost a self-medicating behavior for this individual during that time. Also, another byproduct of the comfort food was the weight gain, which caused the occurrences of the abuse to lessen. And so this was a clear protection for that person. So, and through other interviews that Dr. Filiti was conducting with his patients in that weight loss program, a lot of those stories were coming out. Even if, I don't know if you ever seen 600-Pound Life,
Yeah.
you see there's a number of people who report abuse
Mhm.
being that trigger starting point for their overeating, that behavior,
Mhm.
right? And it's surprising. So Dr. Filiti encountered that, and then when he met Dr. Anda at a conference in Georgia at the CDC, then they started going over the findings, and they were like, "Wait, there is something that's linking uh, someone's experiences as a child to their outcomes as an adult, because there was so many cases." There was another individual who was in the program who gained weight because they were getting physically beat up. It was a male, and he gained weight. When he gained weight and started eating for the byproducts, he got bigger, and then he said the instances of bullying lessened. So that was a protection for him. So what ACEs, and the reason it's gained so much traction over the years, is that new lens. It's asking the question: are we doing approaching things the right way? Like the weight loss study, for instance, that which was sort of that catalyst to ACEs, was the same thing. We're not really getting to the root of the problem if we're saying, hey, take supplementation,
Yeah.
fast, when the only reason you started eating to begin with was a self-medicating reason. There's an undertone under the food. So if we're saying, hey, let's give you some information about why this food is unhealthy, you're not really getting to the problem, right?
Mhm.
You're not really tackling the true issue that this person is having. That's why it doesn't matter how much smoking information comes out. There's people who just can't quit because it's alleviating symptoms of depression and anxiety. That's what nicotine's been shown to do, even though it's temporary. This is their fix. This is what they do it for. So if you have someone licking an ashtray, it's not really speaking to them, right? If you have these commercials, and so it's just like, this is your brain on drugs. You have any questions and stuff like that? You know, the first prescribed antidepressant in the U.S. was something called Benzedrine, and Benzedrine is an amphetamine, and then and it was on the market for about 10 years or so, and it was on the market for about 10 years, and so we see all these things about crystal meth. You've seen the before and afters, and they show
Yeah.
they really don't touch on the fact that there's a link between that and an antidepressant. So it's very easy just to say, "Oh, these drug dealers are out here. We got a war on drugs," but it's more difficult to ask, what benefit is this serving these individuals' life? What is the gain of this behavior? It's Why are they seeking antidepressants on the street? What is actually going on with the kids, right? So these are the tough questions. It's really refocusing our energy, uh, asking different questions, getting to the root of problems, and really asking if we're doing things the right way. We have something that where I work called Merchant Education, and it's funded by the state. But again, are we spending these funds the right way? Is this really the reason why people seek, let's say, nicotine or tobacco products? With all this information out, or the harmful effects to your body, and people are still seeking this out, is there an underlying reason why these things are being sought after, no matter what um, the information gets put out there? So it's really reevaluating your approach, um, and sort of refunneling your resources to the proper areas. So it's truly looking at things through a completely different lens.
You know, Harry, can I say something?
Hmm.
I believe there's a time for therapists and then there's a time for the police, right?
Hmm.
However, I also know because so I'm just saying that to say that I have no problem with the police going out and enforcing the law, right?
Hmm.
However, I think it would be a lot more expensive to have a force of therapists like me than to have a police force, right? See, if you really
Hmm.
had, so I don't think it's that society doesn't know that there's an issue, that is an underlying issue. I don't think they can afford to fix it. That's just my thought.
Hmm. But in the same token, it's in the from the preventative standpoint, so
Hmm.
not the intervention, from the police standpoint, from the prevention standpoint,
Hmm.
that's where this knowledge can come into play because it's sort of an asset. This is speaking, the ACEs really connects to our overall public health, and it's been linked to so many strong correlations, and we'll get into that, the ACE score, but strong correlations between someone's ACE score
Hmm.
and uh, individuals' life path, like occurrences of cancer, occurrences of coronary heart disease, obesity, um, individuals' lifespan. It's all been linked. It's all been correlated. It's all been tied together. And the ACE score, the original ACE study, has been duplicated over and over again. There's been ACE studies that followed in England and different countries and different neighborhoods, because the original ACE study was a middle class 17,000 participant longitudinal study, uh, mostly college educated. Um, the racial demographic breakdown would be 10, what is it, 10% black, 10% Asian, and then 80% white and Hispanic. Uh, and that would be the racial demographic breakdown. But generally, mostly college educated, and they reported certain ACEs, but it's been duplicated in different communities where other ACEs have been identified. But the original ACE study findings have just continued to be backed up, and some of the statistical correlations, people who study data, they say these are once in a lifetime findings. These things that, like for instance, someone with an ACE score of 6 or more is 4,600 times more likely to attempt suicide. So numbers like that pop in your face are huge. So so they just can't be ignored. But I do understand what you're saying as far as the resources. But what ACEs does is give you a window to where to place the resources through, on the surface, brain science understanding, sensitive periods in brain development. It gives us an opportunity to place resources in correct areas.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So if you have a high ACE score, does that mean that you'll have a negative outcome associated um, by that study? Like,
It doesn't pigeonhole you to a negative outcome. It's
okay.
all about statistics. So it's the likelihood is increased due
Mhm.
to a high A score. The likelihood of someone developing cancer is increased. A score of 4 or more is you're 2 times more likely to develop cancer. And how this makes sense is if you have a developing body, like a child's body, developing body, and you're overexposed to cortisol, the stress hormone, it becomes toxic to your system. So that could in turn impact your immune system. So that's why you see these rates of cancer with these longitudinal studies. The original ACE study started in the early 90s and continues to this day. So they're finding these things, and the other, obviously, following ACE studies are longitudinal as well, and continue to this day. So these findings are just being reinforced. So when you see these things, the likelihood increases. I mean, with an ACE score of 6 or more, the lifespan's shortened by 20 years.
Mm.
Wow.
So
So these are powerful findings.
so with the with that ACE score, can you tell us? Can you break that ACE score down for us? Like,
Yeah.
is it based upon like risk factors and protective
So
factors?
no, it's very interesting. There were 10 different categories to the A score. There's household dysfunction, there's neglect, there's abuse. There's two different types of neglect: emotional, physical neglect, abuse, emotional, physical, and sexual. Then the household dysfunction that was identified, you have substance abuse, you have parental separation, you have mental illness in the home, battered mothers was identified, and criminal behavior within the home. So those were the identified ACEs. So the original ACE score, so there's 10 different categories
Mm.
broken into 3 different sections, and the most an individual can score is a 10. So let's say physical abuse, for instance.
And
Um,
the higher the ACE score, you're saying the
the
more negative,
likelihood,
like increase the
yeah,
likelihood of
it
a negative.
increases the likelihood of these negative outcomes, but it's not saying you will have these negative outcomes.
Right.
The likelihood is increased, and this is on a physical
Mm.
development standpoint, brain development standpoint, and a behavioral standpoint, right?
Mm.
So, so, and you can think of the A score as an underestimate of an individual's the impact of that ACE to an individual's life. So if it's sexual abuse, for instance, you can only score a 1. So that counts as 1. Sorry, that counts as 1. But it doesn't matter the amount of occurrences of sexual abuse, right? So the max score you can have is a 10. So you could have, it could be a situation where you're getting abused after school for a number of years
Mm.
by an adult in the home, but you still count that as a 1. So the A score is clearly, so the 1 is these numbers speak loudly. Even a 1 speaks loudly. So when you see an 8 or a 9, that speaks volumes on the impact that can have on an individual's development. So if someone is sexually abused for a number of years and that's the only ACE, they still say, I have an A score of 1. But think of what that 1 is doing to their development, their brain development, and how they're conducting themselves throughout society, and how that's going to impact where they go in life, you know. And just speaking on that, just kind of circling back to the behavioral health center where we work, you saw that where these kids were sexually abused, and you're seeing, like, where is this going to take this individual? How are they going to work through this with these behaviors, these coping behaviors now that they've developed to deal with their heightened levels of stress in this stressful environment? Some of these students or these kids that we work with became hypersexual themselves, right? And I'm talking to just the acute unit where I work, because they're placed in an environment where, how are they going to survive? Okay, if they're, and I'm just going to get pretty raw on you guys.
Right.
So if their mother's prostituting them, right, after, because that's what she does, and then she's doing the same thing to her kids, how are they going to survive in this environment? So they're functioning as if they are hypersexual, and this is how they're going to best survive in their environment. So that's an adaptation in regard to their behavior. And then when they're placed in a different, more tranquil environment, then that's when you see these behaviors stand out. They have to be secluded in an acute unit, and they have to be, sectioned off from other people, because this is how they've learned to function. And so it's almost like they're very adaptive, and we can learn the skills to adapt in a new environment, but we have to learn the skills. So they're not necessarily even maladaptive, because they can adapt, and they can do it very well, and they've done it very well to survive in their environment. But now they got to figure out a way to adapt in this new environment, whatever else they're placed in. And you see that often.
So knowing the 10 categories,
hmm
you can pretty much just shoot the 10 questions and you can have the ACEs score right there.
You can just you can that's based on the original, but other aces have been identified through others. Like
Mm,
poverty is one that's been identified,
mm,
right? Depending on the area or where the ACE study is conducted, race can be considered an ACE.
okay.
Think about even people growing up, African American descent, growing up in the Deep South. Race was definitely an ACE.
Mm.
So these things, yeah.
I'm asking because I want to know what Chaz's ace score is. I'm wondering if you can do a if you can do an
Yeah.
assessment on him, and let's see what his problem is.
I, go ahead, go ahead, go
That's a tough case. He's a tough case. Ace score relies on self disclosing information, and Chaz he would struggle with some of that. Um,
He's like a
but
steel trap.
speaking of that, right? So let's take this into account because I do talk about bullying, right, in regard
Mm,
to ACEs and how policy change is needed uh, in regard to take it more seriously. And I've been, I've done a lot of presentations on bullying. I actually started a bullying initiative where I worked years ago, and and it's far more impactful because toxic levels of stress, like cortisol, the stress hormone, right? We're only designed to be exposed to cortisol about 20 minutes. Beyond that, it becomes toxic to our systems. In the developing body, even more toxic in regard to your body and your brain development, right? So and these mechanisms, as far as cortisol and the fight or flight response, and all this stuff are primitive survival instinctual things programmed in all of us, right? Beyond that survival point of time, then that's when these overexposure to this heightened heart rate and this heightened levels of cortisol and suppressed function in your prefrontal cortex becomes an issue, right? It becomes toxic. So if the bear comes home every night, if you have an abusive father or mother, you have an overexposure, so
right.
your body's making these adaptations, and there's behavioral adaptations,
It's
just
kind of
like
like
so
just like anxiety, right?
mm-hmm,
Anxiety is there. It does serve a purpose. The
mm-hmm,
problem
absolutely,
becomes when the alarm is going off and nobody's stealing the car.
absolutely,
Mm, mm.
absolutely. So with the bullying thing, this threat, this dangerous thing, bear, is at your school every day.
Hmm.
And this can impact an individual's brain development and life path based on what we've discovered through ACEs. So, Chad shared a story years ago. Well, not well. It happened years ago, not that long ago, where you want to tell it? You want me to?
No, I mean you can.
Okay, so
Remember the choices. Remember the
well,
choices.
I just want to. I would love to reconnect with this individual because it would be interesting where they ended up after this pivotal incident. Okay, so Chaz reports that he was being bullied,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Every day.
yeah.
Every day.
And he was able to catch this kid in the bathroom by themselves,
Put him in
right?
a sleeper hole, man.
And put him in a sleeper hold and choke this kid out. So what I want you guys to wrap your head and really think about
Yeah.
is this is a child. Chaz so happened to be a child too. But
Please,
okay, all right, all right.
I was grown up.
This is a child
I was
that
in
is
sixth grade. I was in sixth
that
grade.
can't even scream for help. I don't know how bad he was getting. I don't know how bad he was getting
He's
choked
got
out,
these
but
pythons around his neck.
yeah, got it wrapped around his neck. This kid passes out. He goes unconscious for a little bit. That's how bad it was. That's a blood choke. So he chokes Chaz out, but think in those moments where he's starting to black out, he can't even call for help. He thinks this is it.
Yeah.
He thinks he's done. He's finished, right? So this nightmare situation, right?
For him, not for me.
For him, not for him, for the kid. He
Yeah.
has to relive every single day he would see Chaz after that in
Correct.
class,
Correct.
right? So this is an overexposure to this is what we would deem And overexposure to stress. Definitely weeks and weeks after that, his heart rate would go up every time Chaz would look at him.
Yeah, I mean, if for goodness sake, Chaz walked up behind him.
Walk behind him or went up. Oh my goodness, that was probably terrifying for this kid.
Now I could say that because I was the one that was choked out one time.
Not by
Chaz. Oh,
not by Chaz.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
But you guys got to remember, right? I was a child, I was being bullied. I was being picked on.
Right.
And you get to a point where you say, you know what? Enough is enough. Today is the day of my
Today is the day. So you did it.
You don't have to be defensive. We understand.
Yeah, we're just trying to come from the standpoint now. This
clinical. We're being clinical.
This threat is next to you, is near you every single day in school. And what is it doing to this young, innocent child's? What is it doing to this individual's development? What is it doing? What this toxic level of stress every day? So that kind of speaks to, and it'll be interesting to figure out what happened. And
some people crouch in the corner and whimper, and others say, I'm just telling you right now, this not happening again.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody will die before that happens again. Before I get put in another chokehold, it's not happening.
Yeah, just true. I mean,
so it could go both ways, but nonetheless, it's still traumatic.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, very traumatic. So it will have an impact on you. And that's what we're really starting to understand more and more now. Like the brain is just uncharted waters. It's like a frontier of new discoveries and rewriting things that have already been written through discovery. So, but they are aware of certain sensitive periods in brain development that would be ideal to really funnel our resources. Or, for instance, in the area where I work, we have a lot of unaccompanied minors that come up from Mexico across the border, right? And they just so happen to end up where I am, and understanding the trauma or the toxic levels of stress that these children are going through. New country, different language, different scenery. They're in a facility. Abuses are taking place in these facilities. These have been confirmed. And then they're shipped off away from what they always knew as home, to this foreign place, and they're forced in a school setting, which is probably completely different than any setting or school setting that they've been to.
Yes.
And they're asked to be able to make it, figure it out, and we understanding ACEs, understanding sensitive periods of brain development. There could be things that manifest themselves later due to seedling cells within the brain developing later. So seedling cells that are meant to develop in early adolescence, you will see maybe abnormalities with learning function or being able from the emotional centers in the brain being impacted. And you really won't see this manifest themselves in the behaviors until early adolescence. So if children have been overexposed to high levels of stress, you're going to be working with them, then it's important to say, well, we may start seeing things around middle school age with these children, right? We should have programs in place. We have hundreds and hundreds of these children that have been in these centers that are in our school system. We need to have certain things in place ready just in case we start seeing a lot of issues with learning or issues with being able to regulate emotion, things like that. So these are sort of the windows that we start getting with research in ACEs and understanding the impact of environment in what we actually are seeing and how influential it actually is in what we see in behaviors.
Gotcha. You were mentioning early, just with you were mentioning about the impact, the negative impact, right? If it's abuse, if it's physical abuse,
Mm-hmm.
sexual abuse.
Yeah.
Um, what are some of the, I guess we can call them protective factors that would reduce the negative impact of ACEs? Are there certain things that can kind of counter those traumatic events that are happening in a child's life over time?
This speaks to, let's say someone has been exposed to a high number of ACEs. And this is something I speak to because it's sort of cyclical what you get. You get the you get the adversity, right? So the adversity, then you get the adaptation to the adversity from that individual, right? And then you get societal response, right? How is society responding to this adaptation, right? Is society ignoring the adversity and focusing on the adaptation, or is society going to the adversity? So the way to stop the cycle between adversity, adaptation, and societal response is to completely affect the adversity. Obviously, your response to your response to the adaptation is truly important, right? But
Mm.
it's addressing the adversity is extremely important to prevent the cycle from continuing. So let's say bullying, for instance, right? If it's bullying, telling kids to ignore it, or with let's say cyberbullying, turn off your computer, because that's been actually programs that have been taught to kids in the past. It's not really addressing. It's not a strong a response to the adversity,
Right.
right?
Right.
Really approaching things from, like, let's say, policy changes, harsher punishments would then affect the adversity, which would then lessen its impact, so you wouldn't have these strong adaptations to the adversity. So you're reducing it from a cyclical standpoint, from adversity to adaptation to societal response. So it's important that societal response addresses the adversity.
So what you're saying is when I was a kid, the
Hmm.
school should have protected me so they could protect the other
No, they
kid.
should have protected the other kid.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
I'm
they
the one
should have. They should have put you in those secluded classrooms. Just to remove the threat. Remove the threat.
It's the
Just go
description.
from there. Yeah. So, right, you were bullied for quite some time by this kid. You felt like you didn't have a leg to stand on as far as a place to go to where it would really
Right.
be rectified, right?
Right.
If there were clear, kids know that if you bring, let's say, drugs or whatever to school, there's a harsh response. There's a quick, strong response, right? So they have to be very strategic when they do so. The same response should be for instances of bullying, for instance, because it can have a tremendous impact on an individual's life,
And
and it should be looked at the same way.
for me, what was, so you have the one kid, but then when he's doing it, nobody's
Yeah.
stopping it. Then other kids are doing it. And the next thing you know, you got to choke one out to make 5 other kids stop.
And so that kid is now traumatized, and they see
Right.
the fear in his eyes, so they stop.
Right. Right.
Yeah, he was on the floor, passed out.
Yeah.
Is this what you
I
want?
don't even know how that ended. Did he get up? Did you help him up?
Well, this is what happened. So after his body went limp, right? In my hands. I was startled. There was more fear that was, directed
Just kill
inside
the
me.
man.
I didn't kill him. See, come on, man.
But you could have, though.
And I think he knew he could have. Like, I could
Yes.
have, but let me tell you. So after the headlock, his body kind of goes limp, and I start. I'm like, oh my gosh! And he's on the ground. He's breathing now. I mean, he was breathing before because it was like a blood choke. It wasn't like a thing. But anyway, and I'm like shaking. I'm like, yo, wake up, wake up! And he's lightheaded, trying to get to his feet. And I just told him, I said, listen, man, you just got to stop bullying me, man. Just leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. Let's pretend like this never happened. and we'll just go about our day. And after that, no more bullying. He didn't bully me. The other kids stopped bullying me. Well, it was crazy. And
So are you saying you did the right thing?
I'm not saying I did the right thing, but I said I did the thing because I was traumatized. And Harry just clearly said when somebody people react in a certain way when they become traumatized as a child.
Right.
And then they have it's either adaptation or maladaptation, whatever you want to call it. I had to adapt. I had to adapt. And so did
Yeah,
you,
that was you met the aggression with aggression,
which isn't
and
healthy, but it
which
was
isn't
necessary.
healthy.
It was
And
necessary in the
because
moment.
you were twice the size of every other kid in the class, it was a bad situation.
But see, even if you're twice the size, if you got glasses and a Jerry curl, nobody is taking you serious. Nobody's taking you serious.
Until you choke them and lift them off their feet while you're choking them, and there's this, yeah,
Then the kid with the
and then
glasses,
everything changes.
yeah, the kid with the glasses and the Jerry curl is a threat.
Yeah, that kid is now a big time threat. Yes.
Right. Well, we should continue.
Yeah, yeah, but
Go ahead.
yeah, in regard to that, the societal response, you probably saw nothing done, so you just kept being bullied until you're able to catch the kid in the bathroom, and then you handled it yourself, right?
Right.
But there's other kids who aren't twice the size of other kids who this is something they're just going to have to deal with because they're not choking anybody out,
Right.
right? So then our response to it should be a little bit more serious than maybe a slap on the wrist. Hey, stop bullying him. Stop picking on him. Right. It should be a more serious response. And when kids see the societal response is a lot more serious, then other things may possibly change because there's harsher policies and punishments in place. So that's kind of what that speaks to, sort of a change in our
Amazing.
approach.
Yeah.
Amazing. Because it lines right up with the therapeutic, with a lot of the therapeutic theories, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really does line right up because most of my clients act a certain way because of I always am able to dig back into a childhood experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't do that to expose them. I do that to get them to understand why they're acting the way they're acting, or why they can't stop a certain behavior, or why they're fearful of a certain thing.
Absolutely. That's
Right? And it
absolutely.
always goes back to a childhood experience at a time when their brain formulated a belief
Mm-hmm.
to help them adapt. At that
Mm-hmm.
young age, at that helpless age, the
Well, they're
brain
really vulnerable.
formulated a belief, and that belief was just cemented until adulthood.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What was your reaction when you first found out about ACEs and its research? Like, did it, like a light go off all of a sudden? You're like, whoa!
Not when I first heard about ACE. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Sorry to talk over you, but when I first heard about ACEs, right, it was all about the ACE score.
Okay.
So it wasn't really getting pushed. So they would do a presentation. People would look at the chart, give themselves a score, and then it was kind of open ended. Okay, this may or may not explain things that you've been through, things that you've seen, and that was it, right? So the Dr. Anda, Dr. Filidi, that's not what they wanted. These groundbreaking correlations and findings to speak to. They wanted to really figure out a way for this information and this knowledge to be applied to maybe resource development or channeling resources, or just to be applied to where things that plague our public health that are associated or the risk is attributed to ACEs, um, things can be funneled that way. Funding can be funneled that way to help remedy those things. So that's where the ACE interface training came. That's how that came about. And it spoke to like the brain science. It spoke to community, uh, sort of community empowerment, that resilience piece of it, because they just didn't want it to be about the ACE score and the ACE study. So they had to create something to tie in the findings with something that's actually workable within communities. So
Wow.
that's the direction of
They
it.
literally they wanted to do something about it.
Yeah.
They
So
just didn't want to tell you that this was happening. They wanted to do something about it. Amazing.
Absolutely,
Amazing.
absolutely.
What would you tell like parents, maybe teachers or any other mental health professional? What would you tell them when they're dealing with maybe a child that has some trauma in their life, when they start becoming very punitive and correcting their child, like, what's wrong with you? What are you doing? You're doing something wrong. And then it's more punishment. What would you tell or inform a child, or not a child, but a parent, a teacher, or any type of professional
Well,
in
as
mental
far
health?
as the professionals working with students and or kids, we've seen this time to time where they're observing behaviors and they're just classifying the behavior as they see it. So I can tell a story about a friend of mine, and this is about when I was 10 years old. I'll refer to him as Jay. Um, he grew up in a very toxic environment, home life, right? Dad was abusive. Dad was an alcoholic, and it was, me even being at the house sometimes, uh, when all this fear centered about around when his father was getting home. It was a real thing. You could feel it in the air. You wanted to get out of there because you don't want to have any parts of it. And I would always leave. I never was there when his father got home.
Right.
So just because of all the fear.
Yeah.
But this individual, um, growing up in that environment, was a very aggressive individual, uh, hyper vigilant, highly reactive, very agitated, and this is how he just functioned. From a child's terminology, they would from our perspective, that people called him a bully. They didn't want to be around him. They didn't want to be, and other teachers knew him as being very aggressive. They just that's what they thought, right? Because he was. Um, so they have these labels where they would label him, but they don't understand, especially then. They didn't look to where is this aggressive behavior a benefit, right? Where is this heightened stress response a benefit? Where is this detachment a benefit? Where do these behaviors have a benefit? And these have a clear benefit in the environment he would come home to every single day. It's just that when you get those adaptations colliding with the expectations of the new environment, that's when you run into these issues. And the mistake a lot of people make is they don't look back and try to figure out the underlying benefit of the behavior that they're seeing. So it's from his aggressive behavior being mislabeled because they're not doing the due diligence to really figure out where does this behavior suit or benefit this individual. And this can be applied to so many things. This is from, like I mentioned earlier, like overeating, for instance, or someone smoking, or someone seeking opioids or opiates out on the street level. What benefit does this have in this individual's life? There was a patient that Dr. Felidi spoke about, and he had been abused by his father for a number of years, physically abused. He ended up in jail, got out of jail, started cleaning up his life. And he was on drugs. He got off the drugs, got off the alcohol, but he couldn't quit smoking. And what he was saying, while trying to get cleaned up, he didn't realize how much the drugs, the alcohol, the smoking were keeping the doors closed on all his memories. He didn't realize that this was the purpose of why I I do these things. I don't want to remember or have to deal with the stress and anxiety associated with these memories. So this is why I do it. That was the purpose. right? So if you kind of just looked at his behaviors from the outside looking in, and you're really not looking at it from a new lens of seeking more information, you're just judging it on the surface and saying, oh, these are maladaptive behaviors. He's, why is he smoking? Why is he with all this information out here? Or like my friend I mentioned, why is he violent? Why is he so aggressive with these other students? But there's clearly an underlying reason behind it. And that's what we have to seek out and find as professionals or community members and, parents.
And now, even sometimes as a therapist, guys, I think there are many times when, as professionals, we're about to reach out and touch the issue, and the client's not ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that definitely can happen
Painful.
too.
There's a nerve exposed there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I see a lot of value in your theory. A lot of value.
Yeah, and it's just about exploring and asking different questions. And that's the key, really, asking different questions, seeking different answers. A lot of times the answers that we're applying to what we have as resource and where we're funneling our resources may not be the correct answer to how to funnel our resources. We may be doing a vital misstep in things,
Yeah.
just like the weight loss program that was the catalyst to today's study. It was a complete misstep with a lot of the participants because you're not truly getting to the root of the issue. You're not getting to the reason this behavior exists. It's not because uh, they like food too much. There's a completely different reason why they're doing it. And until you get and answer those questions or get to that problem, you're really never going to uh, get the results or have them get the results that they really want.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So when it comes to ACEs, then pretty much it can't be prevented, but it can be treated. Is that what we're saying? There are certain things
It's adverse childhood experiences. You have things that fell on the list of ACEs like divorce. You can't.
Right.
You're
Can't
not going to
stop
do
it.
anything about that. But what you can do, there's certain things that lend themselves strongly because, let's say, for instance, the support we give individuals that we work with is huge, right? Sometimes, and now I speak to this a lot, we don't understand the impact of this support. It is what gives an individual hope, that belief in their own ability to change their circumstances, right? So that alone can impact a lot of different things. There was some research done on the impact of hope, and you have people with they're talking about mental symptoms of mental illness, which mental illness was on the original ACE study and was it's classified as an ACE. So it's the symptoms that the individuals in your household have to deal with. So let's say a parent suffering from depression. It's those symptoms that they're dealing with. Mom's not getting dad or mom or dad
Isolation.
not getting out of bed. They're isolating themselves. These are the behaviors that they're seeing that adds to their ACE score as a child, right? But if that individual gets support and help, right, the occurrences of these symptoms lessen, so that
Right.
the impact to that in the individuals in the home is greatly affected as well. So it's giving the support that we do give, and that support leads to that hope of being able to change
Gotcha.
current circumstances.
So a lot of positive talk, certain things that kind of empower that person.
Empower that person, even
Yeah,
information on resources,
resource
tying them into
I
resources.
mean,
There's
even the
so many things that
patient,
we do.
the client being conscious of
of the ACEs.
hey, I'm from a divorced family, so I need to be, careful about so and so,
About relationships, maybe
Yeah,
being
I don't take my current marriage too lightly,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just being conscious, yeah. It's
yeah,
amazing, man.
So just having more those exposure, right? Exposure to more positive environments, more exposure to positive self-talk, and like you said, resources, information that can kind of
Yeah, it
counter.
all can impact
Yeah.
because when you're in a situation of hopelessness, right? Just a little branch that you give someone, hey, you can do it. You can make a difference, and it can make a world of difference in individuals' lives. And me, I work in prevention, and so I get to see some of these individuals come back as adults and tell their stories about little things that were done that were so impactful to them at that moment, right? And it made a huge difference. So that support that you give can be, you don't understand how much impact it could have, because a lot of times, you're not hearing those stories from that individual. You're not hearing, a story. There was a time, I was getting in a little bit of trouble in middle school, right? Uh,
I choked
I
some
was going
kids
back
out.
to middle school, yeah, and I ain't choke anybody out though. But there was one friend I had, and she just made it a point to give me a phone call, and she doesn't understand how pivotal that was, right? She just, you shouldn't have, people don't know this about you, this about you. She just gave me this whole talk, right? And we're young, and she doesn't, she never understood. I never even told her how pivotal that conversation was. Yeah, I just got suspended for something dumb. And, people are putting me in this, category, but she knew me. So she knew all this extra stuff about me that other people didn't know. And so in that moment where I thought, oh man, I messed up big time this time, she gave that little bit of spark of hope. Okay, let me start turning things around a little bit. I'm not stuck here, right? And that's what we do for individuals, even though whether you know it or not, and it makes such a huge difference in individuals. There was this one guy at the behavioral health center, and he was hyper violent, right? And I remember he was there. We called it coding. He was coding. He had a pen in his hand. He was a huge kid, bigger than me, and he was like 17, or yeah, he's like 17, almost adult. And he was like, "Man, I'm going off. I'm going off." And then he went and attacked us. It was just me and this other guy in the unit. He went and attacked us. It was this huge thing because we're trying to keep him safe. We're trying to keep from getting stabbed by this pen that he has in his hand. And he's flailing. We finally get him on the ground and everything, and then he just calms down once we have him restrained, and just kind of goes limp. So we let go, and he just starts just crying, right? And he was struggling internally because it was that hope that he was getting from the individuals that he was working with, that these people said you can make a difference. And the thing about it was, his struggle was, I'm connecting with all these people. These people are telling me I can make a difference in my life, and I can change, but these are the same people I've been taught to hate my whole life. So there were the women that worked there, the African or African American people of African descent that worked there, that he was told to hate his whole life, right? That were the ones
Right.
giving him this hope that he could change. So he was almost rejecting this.
Conflicted.
He was so conflicted, and he was so conflicted because he was like, "You guys always tell me I can make a difference, I can do this, but now it's the same people telling me this information that allowing me to believe in myself." He wasn't using these words, but that I'm supposed to hate.
Mm. Mm. Wow. This is a great conversation. I'm sure we could probably go on forever on this stuff, but this topic is hot, boy. A lot of good hot takes, a lot of
Yeah,
good conversation out of this. When it comes to parents, as we're wrapping it up here, where can parents, other mental health professionals, teachers, um, where can they get more information just about ACEs so they have a better
yeah.
understanding of what ACEs is?
The Center for Disease Control and Prevention has a whole host of information. Actually, the CDC is where one of the principal investigators was employed. So they have a bunch of information on ACEs. There's also a lot of great speakers. If you looked up Dr. Anda, Robert Anda, or Dr. Vincent Felitti, they have a lot of talks when it comes to ACEs. But you will find what you need on the CDC website.
Man, thanks a lot, man. Thanks for coming out, man. I appreciate you
No
coming out
problem.
here.
Yeah, let's get the the contracts have been signed and everything. I just, I get paid. I want my money right. So, I don't want issues with that.
And yeah, we'll see what we can do. We're working on some things. The way my checking and our savings works here
You
at
gotta
Beyond
move
Wellness.
money around. You gotta move some money around.
Truck's got all the money, man.
Yeah, I got you.
Fool you, man. He's getting.
Oh, I know. Trust me, I know.
He's getting paid.
He's good.
That's why they're broke and you're so paid.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you're tripping. This dude here, Kevin Hope, got 2-3 buildings with his name on it. He talking about I get paid. Come on, man. The Hope
Well, that just means he has more bills.
The income, buddy, is the outgoing stuff.
Absolutely. That's true. That is very true.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you, Harry. Really appreciate it.
Definitely my pleasure.
We'll have you on again. I'm making a decision. I'm making a decision as a host that will have you on again.
Okay,
because
awesome.
I will have some questions after I do my studies.
Okay, perfect.
Nice.
Perfect.
All right, man. Thanks, Harry, for sharing this important information. I would also like to thank our amazing audience for checking out another great episode. We'll be looking forward to everyone tuning in again because we will be giving out more life lessons at Beyond Wellness Podcast coming soon.